this video, I'm going to give a little example of base skills in child development. So, as an example, we're going to use the idea of reading and writing. So, children, when they get to elementary school, are involved in the tasks of reading and writing. They learn these in first grade through third grade, and they improve them as they get older. But often we get concerned about whether children should be reading and writing in preschool. However, there's a lot of skills that come before reading and writing. So if we think about what comes before reading and writing, let's move backwards a little bit and think about some of the skills that precede these. So we want children to be able to read and write. Sometimes that starts with writing short words. Maybe children would recognize common words. Letter recognition comes before writing words. But these skills also have predecessors. So, for example, understanding the structure of books. Children can't read until they are able to understand the structure of books. So that's a pre-skill. Pretend reading familiar books. So we might see that children are able to read us the whole book, but we know they're not really reading it. So they often memorize the text first before they can actually read. Another skill we might see in preschool is what we call phonemic awareness. That means understanding the sounds of letters and words, and we do some of this with singing ba 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 bubble gum, or even doing rhyming songs, and children start to understand that words can sound the same. And then also small motor skills are really important for young children. So having a refined small motor skills so that they can grasp a marker or pencil would be a skill that precedes writing letters and words. These skills we just looked at often develop in preschool, but even before that, there are some skills that are important to build the base so that children are ready for these later skills. So fine motor skills start with pinch or grasp. We see children picking up Cheerios or just starting to grab a toy. That's the beginning of fine motor skills. Symbolic thought, that's the idea that children can start to understand that things represent each other, like a picture represents a thing in the real world, or letters put together into a word represent an idea. Receptive and expressive language. So even before children can see writing on the page and understand that those are letters and words, they have to be able to understand language, right? And language doesn't start by speaking. Language starts with receptive language, by understanding what people are saying and beginning to build a repertoire of words. Also, children have to have enough visual acuity to be able to really see what's on the page when they're reading, and babies are not born with 20/20 vision. So visual acuity is built as children develop. And then, of course, the enjoyment of stories starts really early. It can start with just sitting on a parent or grandparent's lap and being held, and just the process of story reading can be really enjoyable for children. So if we're thinking about building skills, the first layer of skills starts when children are very young. Even in infancy, they start building these skills. And then some of these skills are still being built as children also are starting to build the next level of skills. They've gotten the first level, and now they're building in, as toddlers and preschoolers, this next level of skills. And then things like letter recognition, we often see when children are like 3.5 or 4.5 or 5 years old, we start to see the beginnings of wanting to write their own letters and starting to ask about familiar words to write. So those things we really don't see usually developmentally, and children are at least 4, sometimes 4.5 or 5. And then those are all the skills that children really need to have before they get to this level of reading and writing. So sometimes in preschool we decide that parents are giving us some pressure, or the standards are telling us that children really need to be able to do some certain specific reading and writing skills. And then, sometimes that pushes down into worksheets or letter of the week, and then, that becomes our preschool curriculum. Or even our toddler curriculum. But then what happens if instead of doing some of these other base skills, we're working up here when children are infants and toddlers and preschoolers? So let's say, we don't build that skill of visual acuity before we start worrying about whether children can recognize a letter on a page. So what happens when I get rid of one of these base skills, right? The whole tower topples. And that's an illustration of how important it is that when children are young, we remember that they have all of these base skills that they need to build so that they'll have the foundation in order to build some of these higher level skills as they get older.